Is there an organization that supports you as a dancer and trans?
No.
None whatsoever.
That was surprising.
I work for a queer ballet company called Ballets, and we are right now an all trans company, and as far as I know, we are the only all transgender ballet organization that I'm aware of. I know there's other queer ballet, there's so much queer ballet.
I'm shocked that the homosexual community has not been supportive of what you guys.
It's our own community.
Yes. Yes.
So no, they don't get any support,
No.
as far as I can tell.
However, that doesn't mean that people aren't supportive. I am a really strong believer in people, in connection, in humanity, and being able to connect with people. That's why I love dance. That's why I love performing. And I find the more I do that, the more I'm able to do that, and the more I continue to push to do that against the world. Yes. The more people understand, the more people I resonate with, the more people I connect with, and if all I can do is a drop in the bucket, hopefully one day that'll add up to a full bucket. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Any questions from the audience?
Yes, I have a question, but first I'll leave in. I'm a linguist, but way out of the mainstream linguist. I work on how human beings use our bodies, the tools that we have to express ourselves, to communicate. In my linguistics courses here, I always have an arts component because I want them to do language that way. And I've come to think myself that speech and dance are the most direct art forms because we're not using some external instrument, we're using our own body. So that's like where I'm coming from. But my question is, a couple of years ago, there was an exhibit at the New York Public Library for Performing Arts at Lincoln Center that you may have seen. Is it called Borders or Frontiers or Crossings or something? And the theme of it was how across the decades from the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, people found in dance freedom of expression that had been denied them elsewhere. Now, there are, of course, boundaries famously in gender roles, but this was about political boundaries, geographical boundaries. And so my question certainly includes gender, but it's broader than that. How do you feel, and if so, how do you feel that dance gives you that freedom of expression?
I feel like for me, at least before I even physically transitioned, because I very much in the classical ballet world, and it is so gendered that even with my own body, I felt better doing the men's steps. I felt more comfortable doing all of their jumps and all of that kind of thing. And it almost really showed me okay, this is what you want, this is what your body is naturally going to. And that was a really interesting way for me to physically kind of express my gender and how I was feeling.
I think that I've heard that they are trying to deal with this better in terms of training, and that classical ballet classes stopped. Men were separated. They came out last. The music slowed down. They weren't allowed to dance on point. And all of that is, I think, changing. That's what I've heard.
I think it's starting to change a little bit.
Come with the whole structure of the training.
I wanted to add to that. I feel like every art form is an expression of what's happening in society at the time. And because if we're moving into another styles of dance, most of them are still binary as well, pretty set up to the roles. But I feel like slowly they're all opening up to breaking those rules and bringing, for example, Salsa World, which is one that I'm pretty close to, having the space in competitions now to have same gender competitions, to have people doing other stuff and not limiting ourselves and changing the language from man and woman to lead and follower, from man and woman to bass and flyer.
Yes.
I think those things are slowly helping that transition. It's taking a long time, obviously, but I think it's starting to evolve.
But back to your question, I do think that using non-binary dancers elicits a different response from the audience, and we're still experimenting on what that response is. I think it can be very complex. I think sexuality is very complex. So even touching on it in these pieces, you can sense in the audience whether they're open to it or not, and I find that really fascinating. I find audiences really fascinating. So expressing things that are almost impossible to say is easier to do with dance than it is.
Dance was the first form of communication, even before singing and speech. Dance was the first form of communication. What you saw in the hunt, what you were looking for, you explained it to you danced to them. And of course, then that it got to, if you're going to express to whatever your gods were, fire, earth, whatever, you performed for them. I mean, this is our first kind of communication that we have.
Martha Graham said this was the first fence ever put up.
So what you've been saying, especially talking about classical ballet and the very gendered roles, is that, it seems to me, tell me if this is wrong, you've been saying that dance, traditional dance, has actually calcified those roles, and you have had to work against them.
Classical ballet, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I would say like in the more like modern and contemporary world, they've been a little bit more open to it. But as someone who's like strictly been in like classical ballet training, classical ballet companies, it's
Ballet has always given us the form.
very and rigid format.
Yeah, rigid format that where other genres have taken and pulled away from, but as a structure of its own, ballet is the purest form that we take from.
And that's what I find so exciting, is that contemporary ballet can use that vocabulary to express all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Outside the boundaries of what they learn in the classroom. You can take those movements and use them for something else much more important.
I mean, that's how contemporary was made, breaking from the traditional forms that people were already feeling at the time. And that's how modern dance became. We got our jobs.
And there was a lot more supportive female choreographers in contemporary dance than classical ballet, that's for sure.
Still pretty low.
Yeah. I think, unless anybody has anything else to say. Good?
Any other questions?
Too long.
So you mentioned that you found that the audience reaction is a particular piece, and maybe this is for the group, but have you found that the audience reaction to, let's just say, non-traditional dancers has shifted over the last 5 or 10 years, that sort of people are used to seeing different gender expressions, different ages, different...
Definitely body types, yes.
Different
Colors,
abilities
yes,
as well.
I think people are getting more comfortable with the idea of playing with it. I think before they would like do it to just see how it would work, and sometimes they just didn't, but I think people are like, oh, let's do this. Like, no, we should bring this person in. I think it's getting comfortable with the idea.
I mean, I was always, as a director of a school, I tried to put into practice same color tights as your skin, so that, you're not pink from the waist down, but you're a different color from the waist. I never understood that. And the resistance I got came from very unusual places I wouldn't expect. Parents of girls of color said, I don't want her to look different than the rest of the girls. They're wearing pink tights, I want my daughter to wear pink tights. You can't really fight that. I mean, what could I say to that?
Trauma response.
Yeah. So we are facing a lot to get classical ballet back into the, into the 21st century, but I think it can happen. That's why I love contemporary ballet, because I think that answers all of it. We don't have to just talk about fairies. Nobody gets a Spanish dance for a birthday present anymore.
Without contemporary ballet, we wouldn't even have flesh on ballets for birds.
Exactly.
You had to fight tooth and nails to even get that.
Yes.
that was the whole thing, like not even 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. I would also, one like final thing that I want to say is like, I feel as a trans person, the direct relationship between like politics, my body, and dance and art and creation, and how these two go hand in hand. And my body is like the vessel and also like the in-between. The state of the world right now for transgender people is really scary. It's scarier than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago felt different. 2020 felt different than 2025 does for trans people. 2018 felt a lot different than 2025 does in terms of my physical safety when I'm out on the street, to be very frank. However, like my presence in the dance world, my art making, my creation as a dancer, my body is always the medium. So my transness, my body not being typical to what people expect to see on stage will always be part of who I am and my dancing. And as this world, this political world shifts, it's imperative to me that like my dancing, I like hold it and I like tend to it and I protect it and I keep working with it, because art and like politics go hand in hand. How times change and how things manifest or don't manifest and all of the different ways the world can look, I think art is directly related to. And our voices are directly related to. Yeah. Yes.
Would you add activist to that as well?
For myself?
Yes.
Would I call myself an activist? That's a very complicated question for me. I think within the world of dance, I could consider myself an activist because I'm very outspoken for myself and my community, and especially in the places that I'm in, specifically within the dance world. However, in a larger scope of political activism, I'm not organizing marches, I'm not organizing town halls, I'm not on the Zoom info webinar, exactly. Yeah, so I don't know how I quite feel about that word all of the time, because there's a lot of work politically to be done that, frankly, I am not doing myself every given moment, because I feel like my efforts are best in what I know. Yeah.
We did talk about the difference in the political situation now as opposed to when we were young, we were their age, how different it was now. We faced a lot of challenges and it was very violent, but this period seems so negative and so polarized. Yeah, as a parent, I'm concerned.
It's very passive aggressive.
Yeah, passive aggressive.
I think it's all social media. I think social media is...
You said that
our
you
ability
turned
to
off
connect with
social
each other.
You would turn off social media.
I delete Instagram off my phone after every time I make an Instagram post, and I re-download it every time I need to make a post, and then I delete it right after again, because it's really bad for my brain to have an Instagram on my phone. It makes me feel horrible. No, exactly. It makes me feel so bad about the state of the world. And when I'm able to turn off my phone or disconnect from this virtual world, I remember that I can like talk to people, that I can take my headphones off and listen to the birds chirping while I'm walking down the street, or I can smile to someone and wave when I'm walking past if we make eye contact, instead of shuffling by with my eyes like everyone's in such a, and I know that's the New York thing, or people think it's the New York thing, but honestly, I also think seeing each other and like knowing your neighbors is a New York thing. I think knowing your community is what like it really means to be anywhere. Yeah, so that's what I've been doing lately too. Personal note.
Wow. Well, thank you all for staying with us.